Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. I've got something really exciting for you here today. If you were watching me last week from Cologne at Gamescom livestream, you'll know that I was able to play two brand new Tier 8 Premium German tank destroyers on the European server on my account. Thank you so much for Wargaming for enabling me to do so. I had an absolute blast with the Kanonenjagdpanzer and what this video will be focusing on, the Rheinmetall Skorpion. Now before Gamescom I had no idea what this vehicle was, but I managed to play about 10 to 15 games in it and started to pick up the playstyle that this vehicle requires. Pretty much every Tier 8 premium tank in the game except for the T-34 gets really bad penetration with its standard ammunition. That is not the case for the Rheinmetall Skorpion. It has the same gun as the Borsig, the Ferdinand, and the Jagdpanther 2, which are all very similar to the guns that you see on higher tiered tanks such as the E-75 and the Maus. And so having that 128mm gun on this premium tank destroyer is very nice indeed. This vehicle plays out in a very similar manner to the Rheinmetall Borsig Waffenträger. And so I'm going to be comparing between the two tanks for this preview. So one thing we should firstly mention is that the Scorpion is very much taller than the Borsig. Look how low profile the Borsig is here. So that means that when the Scorpion has to peer over ridge lines, this is a very nice, juicy, easy target for the enemy to hit. And this, what I would call the forehead of the tank, i.e. between its nose and the top of its head, is a very vulnerable weak spot. And as we can see here, the Scorpion has got a much larger forehead than the Borsig does. And so I quickly found out that if you can see the enemies in the Scorpion, they can certainly see you. And the difference is that you really aren't going to be able to bounce their rounds. Now, even though the design for the Scorpion was based on the Panther, and you can see the hull looks, you can see the resemblance here. The armor is absolutely garbage on the hull and the turret. We can see that it's 30mm, although quite well angled. That might protect you from some high explosive rounds. Unlike the Borsig, where the front of the tank is 20mm effective from pretty much every angle. And so this gives the Scorpion a little bit more protection from some artillery splashes, but more or less from low caliber guns that are loading high explosive rounds from actually penetrating the front of your tank. But then again, when they shoot the gun shield, we can see that it is only 15mm effective, and pretty much every single gun that will meet this tank will have high explosive rounds capable of penetrating here, doing more damage alpha-wise than armor-piercing rounds, and also having that lovely effect of usually taking out crew, turrets, guns, that kind of thing, incapacitating the enemy vehicle. The Scorpion, however, does retain some of the mobility of the Panther. It is rather quick indeed. It has a 650 horsepower engine, giving it a specific power ratio of 17 horsepower to ton. That is massively higher than the Borsig's sub 10 horsepower to ton ratio. But watch out, because the traverse speed of this tank is 30 degrees a second, which is worse than the Borsig. And it should also be noted that the terrain resistances of this Panther chassis are much worse than the Rheinmetall Borsig Waffenträger. So even though you do have that specific power advantage, the Scorpion has some serious trouble traversing on medium terrain and soft terrain. However, if you're able to pick up some speed, you can go forwards at 60 kilometers an hour. That's much better than the Borsig's 35 kilometer an hour top speed limit. And backwards, this vehicle can go at 20, which allows it to withdraw when it's under fire, a lot faster than the Borsig, which is limited to 12 kilometers an hour. Other nice things about this tank is the health pool that it currently gets. It gets 1,300 hit points compared to the Borsig's 1,100, which can be very nice for taking that extra shot, especially considering that you haven't basically no armor at all. Also, the view range of the Rheinmetall Scorpion is slightly better than the Borsig at 370 meters. But I still feel that 370 meters does require binoculars to get that hyper view range that you really want to get, over maybe 450, 460. And I think if you use coated optics, even if you're using chocolate with a very skilled crew, you're probably only going to get about 430 meters view range out of that. And although I think the vehicle will do better with binoculars, that's going to be a matter of personal preference, whether you want to use coated optics or not. So now let's get on to the important part of a tank destroyer, and that, of course, is the gun. This 128mm gets 246mm of penetration with its standard rounds, and 311 with its premium rounds. And it's a good thing that the Scorpion gets that 311mm of penetration, because it can meet vehicles up towards tier 10. Now, unfortunately, we're going to go to the disappointing aspect of the Rheinmetall Scorpion, and that is the DPM. It's just over 2,000, meaning that the DPM of this tank is over 20% worse than the Borsig. Time after time playing this vehicle on the live stream last week, I found that the rate of fire just didn't quite cut it to make this thing a monster on the battlefield. Lots of you who have played lightly armored tanks will know that it's all about getting that initial shot off, pulling back round the corner before the enemy is able to hit you. And when your DPM is as bad as this and your rate of fire is as low as this, then quite often they come round the corner just before you manage to reload where you can finish them off. Nevertheless, you'll be happy to know that the accuracy on this tank is 0.34 and the aim time is 2.2, making it just as good as the Borsig. And so gun handling wise, you're going to be doing very well indeed in the Rheinmetall Scorpion. So that's quite enough theory crafting. Let's get stuck into some gameplay. And I must say that this footage was recorded live during Gamescom last week, so I will be trying to add in some post-game commentary as well as the live commentary that I had during the game. Alright, let's do this, guys. So as you can see, the Scorpion does not get preferential matchmaking on the enemy team. We see 5 tier 10 tanks. And just ignore if my voice does not match up with the webcam that you're seeing at the moment, as I am going to be muting the stream for irrelevant parts of the conversation so I can give you a more detailed post-game analysis. So, we're playing here on Sand River, right? Yeah, that's Sand River, you know, the magical, mystical river that goes through the center of the map. So it's a bit of a tricky map, I feel, for a tank destroyer, because you can sit around in base and wait around for pretty much nothing to happen for ages. Or alternatively, you can rush forwards, get spotted, and when you're in a lightly armored tank like this, get absolutely shut down very quickly. However, I wanted to use the mobility of the Scorpion. And as we can see, until we reach the slope where I guess our ground resistances and our engine power started to perform badly, we were racing away. And we're pretty much being able to keep up with these medium tanks. So that shows you that the Rheinmetall Scorpion, it's not slow at all. I mean, that E50M has got, what, 1,200 horsepower? Fair enough, it weighs a lot more than the Scorpion does. But the possibilities of getting into advantageous positions with the Scorpion are how much you're willing to risk it, really. Obviously, you don't want to be caught moving into position when you've got no armor to get there. And also, quite often, when I try to put myself into aggressive positions such as this, if an enemy medium tank or a light tank also decides to do the same thing, that can put a lot of pressure on you as well. These vehicles really do not do well against light tanks. If you meet an AMX 1390, you might be able to shoot him once, possibly twice, before he's able to unload. And if he's able to put every single one of his shots into you, he's going to be taking you down. Now, the setup that I like to use on this tank will be a camouflage net and binoculars. I found that the camouflage on this tank was rather nice indeed. If I can try and keep my opponents between about maybe 375 meters plus, then they're not going to be able to see me unless they've got some insane view range. There we go. We put one round into the Centurion there for 450 damage. And he returns fire with his 20-pounder, giving me a bit of a sting.
I'm not
no pun
liking
intended.
This position for the Scorpion. I can't afford to get spotted. Let's use the high top speed limit of this tank to relocate and try and find a more advantageous location for me to use. Check out the speed of this thing downhill, guys. It does lack a little bit of engine power, I feel. Hey, SpaghettiOs 41, thank you so much for continuing. Subscribe. But check out the possibilities of relocating with this tank. If you do manage to get some momentum, like down a shallow hill,
then you certainly can fall back or advance places very quickly indeed. So that means that the Scorpion is able to not only outgun a lot of its opponents, at least until you have to use the rate of fire of this tank, which is very low indeed, but it can also outmaneuver them as well. So the position that you see me in now is more of a stereotypical camping location for a tank destroyer. However, we're not going to hold back there. We want to press on and get our gun into the fight. We're going to go and support this Jagdpanzer E100, the Jagdtiger, the E50, in shooting targets that the E100 at the front is spotting. Now we can see an E100 at the front.
I'm going to reload a premium round for the E100. Premium rounds are what you need really to deal with the tier 10 German.
The difference between 246 millimeters of penetration and 311 is massive.
I don't think I'm spotted, am I? No. I thought he was aiming at me and I was really worried. He's angling his turret armor really well. Well played to the guy.
However, even 311 isn't enough to get through the front of an E100's turret. At least every time. However, we're going to reload, see if we can get the second one in. Oh yes, 498 damage done to him there. We're going to reload one of our high explosive rounds to see if we can finish him off. Will we be able to reload in time? Unfortunately, that is not the case. Maybe the Borsig would have been able to get that shell in. So we fire one aggressively off there, as if we were just hoping maybe to catch the M103. But I didn't really want the high explosive round loaded anymore after the E100 had fallen. And so it was a case of us wanting to reload and taking the chance to hit that tier 9 American heavy tank. So now we have an IS-7 below us. An IS-7 is a very tricky tank to penetrate. 246 millimeters of penetration. We're going to give it a good go. Thankfully, we've got his side. One thing that I failed to mention in the garage as well is that this tank gets 7 degrees of gun depression. However, 7 degrees of gun depression still means that we had to expose quite a lot of our tank there to be able to try and catch the IS-7. This time, we're reloading a premium round. And that means that as we can hit the gap between his tracks and the upper hull armor, we are able to easily take out that tier 10 heavy. Now we're just skipping forward a little bit in the gameplay here. This was quite a slow-paced game. And the Scorpion is a very slow-paced tank, even though its mobility is quite high. On a map like this, which is very open, you cannot afford to get shot at. So we're using this Lurve as a little bit of a guard, I guess, against the M48 pattern, so hopefully we're going to be able to assist each other in taking down this tier 10 American medium tank, an M48 pattern. So this is a good example of 2 tier 8 premium tanks working together to take down an opponent which is very dangerous indeed. Big shot there into the M48 pattern, and hopefully that will enable our buddy to go and finish him off. Double team, fantastic work there. Now if I'd raced on ahead, there's every possibility that that pattern might have been able to put in 3 quick shots into me, catch me by myself, and every shot that he hits anywhere on my tank is pretty much going to overmatch my armor, and so it's guaranteed damage against a lightly armored tank such as the Scorpion. So by just working with our allies there, it doesn't really matter so much about the poor armor that this vehicle gets. ISU 152. Good night. Securing another kill there on a tier 8 Soviet tank destroyer. So look at those lights and lasers behind me. Oh my word. As we take a big hit there from the T-28, who is still sitting in base. Poor T-28 hasn't had much of an impact in this game.
Yeah!
And he gets shut down at the end of it. So quickly to look at the post-game stats, we can see this was our ace tanker in the Rheinmetall Skorpion. We netted 79,000 credits here and 9,000 experience for our 5 times bonus that was happening during the Gamescom event. So we picked up 2,446 damage here and 3 kills, 1,201 base experience points. We fired 16, of which 12 hit, and because of the kind of range that we were engaging our opponents and the very thickly armored tanks that we were shooting at, we only managed to pen half of those shells. However, let's not forget that this is a premium vehicle, so we were able to make 40,000 credits for a positively mediocre game. So after playing 16 games in the Scorpion solo, fair enough this might be a small numbers problem, but I feel like I was having a high impact in the game. We got 69% wins in those 16 rounds with 1,100 average experience. Our average damage might be a little low for a tier 8 tank destroyer at 2,200, and as we can see here, I'm doing 2,600 average in the Rheinmetall Borsig Scorpion, fair enough over a larger number of games, but I attribute this to the fact that the rate of fire in the Borsig is so much better, and also that I'm only beginning to know how to use the Scorpion, and I'm sure that if or when I ever manage to pick up one of these vehicles, I'll slowly be able to refine my tactics in it. And that brings me on to one of my next big points, that the Rheinmetall Skorpion isn't scheduled to be released. We know that the Kanonen Jagdpanzer is coming next patch as a Jagdtiger 88 replacement. But while the Rheinmetall Scorpion seems to be pretty much finished and polished in the game, I think it's a very interesting and balanced tank. We do not yet know how we're going to be able to get our hands on one, but I'm certainly looking forward to doing so. I feel that the Scorpion does much better in a bad matchup than the Kanonen Jagdpanzer will be able to. But with much worse mobility and worse DPM than the Kanonen Jagdpanzer, the Scorpion doesn't seem to do as well when it is top tier. Nevertheless, the key features of why I love this tank is the 7 degrees of gun depression, the rather decent mobility, and the fact that you do have that monstrous hard-hitting gun, which is unusual for a premium tank. And I really look forward, if ever, to picking up one of these beasts. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this sneak peek at the Scorpion. If you did, please consider giving this video a like down below. It really helps the channel out. And if you want to see the other Tier 8 German premium tank destroyer that will be coming very soon as a replacement for the Jagdtiger 88, then simply click up here and you can go through to a full preview on that vehicle. And let me know in the comments down below what you think about the Rheinmetall Scorpion. Do you think it's going to be better than the Kanonen Jagdpanzer? Do you think that it's overpowered, underpowered? What do you think is about right to be put into the game? And how likely are you to pick one up if or when they do get released into the game? And as always guys, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic and hopefully I'll see you soon.